what this implantable device does is it senses the pressure in your heart and can also predict decompensation, potential rehospitalization. And their clinical data has been extremely encouraging. So again, not a commercialized device at this point, but something that's coming in the near term. And then when you look at the future, what really would be the holy grail in med device innovation? It's the closed loop therapy devices. So something like the artificial pancreas. We have two separate devices right now. We have a continuous glucose monitor, and we also have an insulin pump. The insulin pump, you program according to your glucose levels. It delivers insulin for type 1 diabetics and a small number of type 2 diabetics. There's research ongoing to pair those two different devices so that you can individually titrate what insulin level you need as an individual based on what your glucose measurement is at that point in time. That is just one example of a closed loop type of therapy that we think can have tremendous power. And incumbent on all of these things is this notion of contextual analytics. So the devices are one piece of it, the data is another piece of it. Any clinician will tell you, great that you have all of this data, but don't dump all of this data in my lap because I don't know what to do with it. So providing analytics support and algorithm support so that you're only providing actionable data. It becomes critical on the device innovation side. I'm not an engineer and I won't pretend to be one, but my engineers tell me that, look, the more data you try to send off a device, that has battery implications. So how do you start to move to on-device algorithms? What exists on the device? What exists in the cloud? I think all of those innovations will really drive down the cost of care and will really improve the care for individuals.
Any of our other panelists like to either respond or add to?
I would say that I probably wasn't clear, but Continua is also a nonprofit, and we have 240 members, and we're striving for the same goals, and it's really to lower healthcare costs. And it's not going to happen until we get standardization. And so later this year, you're going to see this happen with Bluetooth Low Energy and some others. It's as if, do you remember maybe 15 years ago when you had a cell phone, it only worked in your neighborhood? And if you went to New York, you had to call your cell provider ahead of time to let them know. That's sort of where we are right now. We need to get to the point where you can buy a cell phone and take it, or buy these medical devices and have them just work. And to your point about the interoperability, you want to be able to have a Corventis patch work with a gateway, but then have a doctor prescribe maybe a blood pressure cuff and a glucose meter and know it's going to work. And that's the whole idea of interoperability and standardization that we're pushing for within Continua. And that'll help drive costs down because you'll get more people involved in the industry if they know that they can build a device, they put a radio on it that'll interop with these other gateways. They don't have to worry about this cottage industry where these developers have to come in and work with every single phone and every single sensor and integrate them. So that's what we're hope to get. So our goal is to divide.
Well, I just like to add, quite naturally, and everything we're speaking about is network or the cloud, or that's really what's enabling the technology, right? So if we look as we talk today, of course, you'll hear certain some of the technology, but so much of it is enabled in connectivity and understanding how you secure the network and how you make sure privacy is there. As everyone working in this industry realizes, privacy is a huge piece of the puzzle, and so anyway, so we'll be talking about that, I'm sure.
Nicole, you had mentioned earlier in your introduction the idea of frugal engineering. How is that paradigm different from what's currently happening in kind of the engineering design side?
So I think, again, my background is not in engineering, but we hosted an event in Washington, D.C. last month called HCIDC Day, and Bakul was there as well. It was a convening of innovators such as yourself, and it was a conversation with the FDA about how to simultaneously bring innovative devices to the market while still protecting the public safety. And in the context of that conversation, we had the executive director of Johns Hopkins CBID program out, and his comments were, look, in order to really drive down the cost, we have to somehow lower the cost of the devices that are out there. And my grandfather is an engineer, and he really was about keeping the cost of the innovation as low as possible to be able to translate that that price point to the end user. And he said, you know, my grandfather couldn't understand this new generation or this new culture where there seemed to be this culture of almost wastefulness in the context of how devices were developed, because there was this notion that, at least in the US, we can pay for these devices regardless of what the price point is, because that's how our payment system is configured. And so the CBID program at Johns Hopkins is all about frugal engineering, in part to make these technologies accessible to, and it starts very much outside of the US, to make these technologies accessible in other resource-poor environments or in places where they simply just can't afford expensive technologies. The irony is that the United States is becoming one of those geographies. And so they very much feel that this new generation and folks who are sitting in the room today really understand the concept of frugal innovation. It's in their DNA, is what he said. And we feel that it's absolutely critical to keep the price of the innovation when it actually gets to the marketplace at a point where it's affordable, not just to individuals, but also to the health system and the people who pay for that care.
I'd like to just add to that, Aaron, if I may. I think Nico's absolutely right. I think the trend we are seeing is going toward not only incremental changes to very complex devices, that's where some of the innovative needs are there, but also using some really, really simple technologies which are common today, which was not common about 10, 15 years ago. The internet, the mobile phones, the connectivity, all that is going to create new opportunities for folks to come up with technologies that may actually lower healthcare costs. And I think leveraging some of those levers that happen to be in front of us is going to be critical for us. I mean, you should learn from other industries, not only just the medical device industry, but other industries that sort of solve it to some extent. We should probably leverage that. I think that's where the drive is going to be in the